we're grateful you all could join, and we're excited to get to chat with you over the next little bit. We'd love to introduce ourselves and then learn a little more about you. So I think Dave will kick it off for us.
Thanks, Brittany. So my name is Dave Palmer, and I'm over customer success for the Lucid for Education team. And really excited about this new tool as we've started to have some conversations with those who have been using it, and excited for you all to get kind of a sneak peek of how to use it in some very specific ways. I've been with Lucid for Education for about 2.5 years, and in education technology for the past just about 6 years, typically in roles similar to what I'm doing currently. And just kind of a fun fact, my prior life was actually in human resources, but in that experience for about 8 years, I did a lot with technology and training and spent a lot of time working with customers. So it was a natural fit when I moved over into the education technology space, which I have loved. So I'm very excited to be here with you today.
And I'm Brittany Davis. I began in teaching. I taught middle school and high school English language arts for 6 years. And then I kind of led out on curriculum instruction at an educational nonprofit before joining the Lucid for Education team 2 years ago and support our learning solutions team here. Okay, so to get started for today, I'd love for you to envision with me a scene, and then we'll move into what our objectives are and share some of those resources. But if you'll envision with me an environment in which your students are all working together, and I'm talking students who are working maybe in a brick and mortar classroom, students who might be at home learning, virtual learning, and they're all working together and they're commenting and they're engaging with each other's ideas, and they're even at a point where they're facilitating this themselves, they're driving it, and you are able to, meanwhile, see them all doing that and instantly in a glance be able to see, okay, I want to provide more support for these students, or these students are really getting it. Maybe we could have them help share even more. And additionally, though, to this, you didn't have to build anything beforehand. You didn't have to prepare anything before that class time launched. How would you feel about that as an educator? For me, I know when I was envisioning this, I was like, that's what I was striving for with my students. And it felt really meaningful. It often indicated that there was like true meaning, true relevance going on in our learning and our higher order thinking. So that's what we want to talk about today. How can we hopefully provide some tools that'll help you as you're creating those meaningful, rich learning experiences? And the key ways we want to do that today are give you some ready-made, ready-to-use ways that you can facilitate class discussions, and then also some tips for not only effective, but also things that are going to save you time, ways you can get comprehension checks and formative assessments with your students. And we'll do all of this in Lucid Spark. Dave was mentioning our new tool, Lucid Spark, right? So I'd love to introduce you to that. I'm going to jump over to this blank Lucid Spark board, which is Lucid Spark is our most intuitive, collaborative digital whiteboard that gives us the whiteboard back in whatever environment we're in. And it also expands the physical whiteboard in the classroom so it has more power, and we'll talk about how. First, you'll notice though, over here on the left is our key toolbar. We have text boxes, we have sticky notes, shapes, lines, and then freehand drawing. And we have some other options here. We can even drag in some templates. You're kind of getting a glimpse though, as you look around the board. This is one reason Lucid Spark is so intuitive, we're finding, is because it's this clean, it's this minimal, that my eyes are naturally drawn to the left toolbar, just to the things I need, and I'm not cognitively overloaded with extra tools and distracted or confused. You're probably also seeing, you've met Dave, do you see here in the top right, a little icon with DP, his initials? And we're also able to, when I turn on Collaborator Cursors, see him moving around. So that's another power of Lucid Spark, is the collaboration is visual and it's instant, and we can all be in here working together. So how can you use this Lucid Spark to facilitate the classroom discussions and elicit student feedback? That's what we want to begin talking about. as I share 2 examples with you. So I'll jump to them. I'm actually, just a quick little side note, if you see my cursor, it's down in the bottom right corner of my Lucid Spark board, and I'm clicking on something that looks like it has an indicator on a map. It's our mini map, and it helps me, since Lucid Spark is this infinite canvas, and it can have more than 200 collaborators as well, although we may not be having that many. We sometimes really need to pinpoint where we're at. So this is actually going to help me. It's going to jump me when I click on certain areas straight to what I wanted to share with you. This is an example from Annie. She's a teacher, a science teacher, actually, in Virginia. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. It's a screenshot she took just a couple of weeks ago when her students were working on co-creating together a vocabulary mind map. And she shared that she didn't have to do anything before the class started. She just opened up Lucid Spark, shared it with her students, and you'll notice what's going on for them. You probably see the names of students over here who are in the board collaborating. You probably see that she captured where some of their cursors are. You're noticing the emojis. We'll come back and talk about those. And you're probably noticing a timer is counting down. And what she loved is that on the fly, she could get them all working together and exchanging knowledge and information. I want to show you another one as well, and we'll talk about how this happens. So this is Emily, and she's a teacher at an international school. And right when they got the news that they were going to full virtual learning, she was concerned, truthfully, because a lot of what they do in their English language arts class hinges on chalk talks or discussions where they could come up to the whiteboard and they could all be sharing ideas and responding to each other. So the first day of virtual learning, she went ahead and opened up a Lucid Spark board, crossed her fingers and said, I hope this works. She noticed she didn't have any lag time, and the students just instantly started dragging out those shapes and doing the same thing they would do on the whiteboard in the class, but here virtually now. And what was interesting to me and what Emily said was that she actually saw more equality and participation here, that students who had been concerned or a little intimidated to walk up to the whiteboard in the past were commenting here. So after sharing those 2 examples, we'd like to talk about how did these come to life just on the fly? Because you probably noticed a similarity between those 2 educators. They weren't preparing resources in advance, but yet they were still getting all of their students working together in an effective way. So how did they do that? And to share that with you, we're going to start by focusing in on 4 tools that we can use to get those ideas out. And then we'll move into how we leverage those to then create class and group discussions. I'm going to jump back to our Hello board and go back to this toolbar we've been talking about and actually start with sticky notes as our first tool. You're going to notice that I'm clicking on it and I'm dragging and I'm dropping it onto the board. And as soon as I release, I can go ahead and start typing. The line is there for me to start typing. It does not default to this bold of a font. This is just what I had on before. We can get a little more creative with this and a little fancier if we want. I can easily change the text, the font here if I want to. I can, let me rewrite this. I can, let's get another one going here too. I can change the size of it. Maybe we want it to be really large too. I can make it bold or italicized or underlined, change the color. Let's go, let me highlight this and let's change it up. And yeah, we'll go yellow here. I can include a link, and we'll get into some of these other features as well. So that quickly, we can get ideas out. Also, you probably notice if I want to change the color of this sticky note, I can, which does not work with my yellow font there. And that's the same that we can do here. We can click on it and choose different colors as well. But it can be just as simple as clicking, dragging, dropping onto the canvas wherever we want it to go. The second tool that we'll look at is, like, let's say we don't want to use sticky notes, but we want to get text ideas out there. We can click on this text box, and it's the exact same functionality. Click, drag, release. As soon as I release, I'm ready to start typing. So I'll say hi again, and all the same abilities to change that up, to customize that. By the way, you probably notice when I click off of that, there's no toolbar, right? But when I click on it, my toolbar appears. We're all really familiar with this, that this is how technology works, right? And intentionally so that what the tools I need, it's like reading my mind, right? The tools I need appear when I need them, go away when I no longer need them. So I'm not cluttered or consumed or overwhelmed by tools that I don't need at that time. But let's say we wanted to do more of a mind mapping experience and we want to use shapes. Again, we come over here to the left toolbar and I can just drag and drop that shape onto the canvas. I may not always want that shape though, this rectangle. So on my toolbar that appears here, I can click and I can instantly switch it to any different shape that I want. But you may notice too, it gives me the option to convert it to a text box or a sticky note as well. I can do the same thing from over here on this side, choose which one I want to drag out. And same possibilities. It instantly is ready for me to start typing. And I can change all of this along with the color or outline here. Then we want to show though too, we may move on to how do we freehand draw here though, right? Because this is a digital whiteboard. So just like we do on our whiteboards in physical spaces where we can write, we can annotate, we can draw, we want to do that here as well. That's where I come over to the pen feature, choose the thickness, choose the color, and now I can start drawing anything that I want to draw here. I can also click on erase all. One little tip, since we may be thinking about this with our students, that only erases that student's work. They can't erase all the other students' work as well. So I'm curious for you. Let's back up just a little bit and then we'll move on and summarize here. We've looked at 4 different tools that we can use to just start getting ideas onto the board right away without having to do work in advance. We've seen text boxes, sticky notes, shapes, and then the freehand drawing. Curious, what type of activities do you do with Post-it notes, with sticky notes in your classroom? If you'll go ahead and put that into the chat, I should let you know we will be giving away some gift cards at the end of this webinar, 5 gift cards. So anytime you comment, your name will go into the drawing for that, and we'll be announcing that at the end of the webinar. So if you don't mind sharing out with all of us, what are some of the activities you use with students that involve sticky notes or Post-it notes? And we'll go ahead and start reading some of these ideas. Oh, I like that. Hosting reflections, exit tickets. Yes. Very cool. Brainstorming, ordering ideas. Okay, exit tickets. Yes. Oh, this is a good one too. Group notes, card sorting. It's like virtual index cards that you can move around, right? Book chapter opinions and brainstorming. Yes. Oh, and I like the difference between it could be discussion questions or formative feedback, and then prioritizing. Those are really cool ideas because you can move them around and prioritize. Okay, thank you.
Brittany, I've got a couple as well in the Q&A.
Oh, perfect.
So brainstorming activities, review questions, noticing and identifying good writing.
Oh, yes. Okay. The former English teacher in me is like, yes, I would absolutely do that. I love that. Thank you. Okay, we're getting your names added into the drawing at the end. Thank you. So where we'd like to go from here, taking these ideas of how we just get students' ideas out and shared. Now, how do we harness those and use that for a classroom discussion or an engaging group discussion, something like that? So there are 3 features we will actually want to look at with that. I'm going to go ahead and move on to, for context, an affinity map. This is an example from a class that was focusing in on a science activity. They're actually studying migration. And we'll walk through the 3 features here. We're first going to begin with something called Collaborator Cursors. So what was happening for this class was they were just brainstorming, again, getting those ideas out, right? Like word vomit at this point of what do we know about migration? And they use the sticky notes. But what if this teacher had wanted to see, instead of just everyone having the same color of sticky note, what if she wanted to see, well, who put destroy and who put predators? How do I know who's contributing? She could use something that we call Collaborator Cursors. And I'm going to go ahead and you're going to watch me get Dave in this with me. So you're probably seeing some of my sharing capabilities here. Oh, he's magic. He joined before I could even share. Okay, very cool. So he is in here with me. And now what I'm going to do is go up to, do you see this eye, top right of my screen? So you see Dave moving around. I'm going to select, oh, actually, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. I am going to show you that in just a minute, but I'm going to go over to this icon here with 3 people. We call it team tools, group tools, and go down to the third option, Collaborator Colors. And I'm going to toggle that on. And it adds the legend to my canvas. So now I know what color Dave is, which is so true, right? We see that his icon up here in the top right is a dark pink. We see his cursor moving around and it's a dark pink. And now he's going to drag out a sticky note and watch what happens with that sticky note. It's dark pink as well. So this is really cool because it aligns it all. It's repeating everywhere the fact that Dave is this dark pink. By the way, in case he has a problem with that, I can change his color here, right?
Okay.
And then it changes. So one thing though, by the way, quick little tip, if it's getting annoying to see people's cursors moving around, we can just toggle off. But the value of this is now we start to know who's participating, to what extent they're participating. We can respond to certain individuals. We could even be in groups responding and doing this. And I didn't have to really set that up. It just effortlessly did that for me. So that's one of the tools we can use to start harnessing our ideas in a group or class setting. The second one that we're going to look at is a timer. And you saw a sneak peek of this in Annie's example with her science class, but I'm going to come back up here again to the team tools and click on the first option now, which is timer. And I can type in here whatever I want to set it to. Maybe I want to set it to 1 minute and 45 seconds. Actually, I'm just going to use one of these pre-populated timeframes and press start. And now it's going. And for us as educators, we know that key to learning is first classroom management, right? And a consistent theme we see in classroom management is giving explicit timelines, giving explicit time expectations. Hey, we're going to brainstorm for 5 minutes. Not everything translates, nor should it translate directly online, but this is one that we can maintain. And a cool benefit of this is you notice the time is counting down. Every student can see that individually, wherever they are. And then it's ringing, silently ringing, but it's ringing for me once the time is up. And I can go ahead and stop that there. So that's actually a great way to manage those expectations and kind of help bring us back together. The third feature or tool that we could use here is where I was going earlier. So I'm going to come back to this eye and click on something called Call Others to Me. And this is, I was with a group of elementary teachers last week, and they were saying, okay, I really want to collaborate with my students, but if I jump them into an infinite canvas like this, how do I know where they are? How do I know they're actually doing what I want them to be doing? How do I know they're not working on, one describes some like video game or something that they were doing? And that's where they loved this Call Others to Me. So Dave is in here with me. Let's say he's off brainstorming in another area. Maybe his group is working over to the right, another group's working over to the left. But I'm ready to discuss this as a class. So as the teacher, I want to start to facilitate a discussion around this. And I want to hone in on safety in babies. At this point, I'm going to call others to me. And what that does is Dave gets an invitation to jump to exactly where I am. So now, no longer is he off on the side, he is seeing what I'm seeing. And I know he is. His screen is captive there. But something cool that we can do as well is I'm going to click on his icon. So some teachers are saying, well, like, what if I don't know how Maria's understanding this and I really want to go help her, or I want to see what she's thinking. How do I know where she is? I just click on her and I can follow her and I see what she's doing. I have my cursors off, but I'll turn that on and I could see her moving around and what she's doing. And then I could go and comment and help her. We'll get into that, commenting and helping. So I can do that with any of my students who are here. And I'm just going to use my map and jump back to where I was on this affinity example. So those are three tools. There are more, but those are 3 tools we can use to facilitate discussion. It's the collaborator cursors, the timer, and call others to me, and then follow others. So another gift card opportunity coming up here. I'd love to hear from you. My question is, based on what you've seen, those 4 tools that you've seen of how we can just get student ideas out, and then the 3 of how we can start to really engage around those ideas, will you post in the chat for us, how would you use this with students at whatever level you're teaching?
Brittany, while we're waiting for those, can I answer a couple of Q&A questions?
Oh, please.
And there have been some good questions in Q&A. So one was whether or not these features were available to anybody that didn't have a Lucid Chart account. If you host an online training session, will people be able to interact on the whiteboard without having an account? So if they don't have a Lucid Spark account, there is a way to do an anonymous share. And not all the features are set there, but there are a lot of those features that are still there. So there is some level that they will be able to engage in. And then there were some questions about Lucid Chart versus Lucid Spark, and they are 2 separate applications. Depending on your access that you have currently, if you're on one of our paid K-12 enterprise accounts, you may have access to this already. Otherwise, it may be a feature that you have another free access to if you're on a free account, or it would be a paid account for our other enterprise users. So it just depends on what level you are.
And we will answer to how do we subscribe to Lucid Spark? I know you're kind of answering that as well, Dave, but we, at the end of the webinar, will actually walk you through how you can get an educational account if you don't have one already. So that's a great question there. I love like Nancy shared, I would have the students comment. She teaches grad students. That's awesome. We actually use Lucid Spark at our company all the time, and all the Fortune 500 companies that use Lucid Spark do as well, but to comment on processes, to brainstorm new innovations. So I love that idea. Oh, and this is a really good point by Elizabeth too, that you can save the collaboration that you do with other teachers as they're integrating technology. And that's an interesting concept. I remember on my whiteboard writing save on top so it wouldn't be erased overnight. Or like in multiple classes, I wanted them to see what another class had done, but then I was running out of whiteboard space. And so that's kind of a beauty of a digital whiteboard, right? That this does save, like we have a permanent record. And so students at home, students in different areas, if they're not with us at that moment, they can still see the discussion. We can refer back to this as well, right? So I love these comments. Online training sessions. Yes. Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Denise in the Q&A said having separate groups of students have different group discussions and then being able to go visit those different groups.
Yes. I love that idea. That's really cool. And they can be presenting, right? And you visit those. Exactly. Okay. These are awesome. Thank you, everyone. Those are really great ideas. Sometimes I feel like that's the power of getting educators together, is that you get to hear everyone's creative ideas there. I would love to share with you. We're going to get this out to you at the end of the webinar. It is a discussion strategies toolkit. So if you're interested in this, feel free to use it. It's giving you 6 templates. So in addition to the ideas we've been seeing come in, here are some templates you could use if you're interested in that. We've seen the chalk talk. We've seen a little bit of the infinity map or list group label activity. So we'll briefly walk through the Socratic Seminar, the gallery walk, the mind map, and philosophical chairs. And these will all be templates that you'll do exactly like you see me here. If you're interested, you'll just click on it and it will open the template up for you. I'll walk through these examples and then we'll go ahead and switch over to eliciting student feedback or anyone's feedback, whatever group we're in, right? So you'll notice when I open this, instructions pop up. These are instructions we've put for the educator there. You're free to delete those. It has some links to some tips if you want to know more about how to do this. But I'll just briefly zoom in. So I'm just using my trackpad here to zoom in so I can get this to the level that I want to see it at. And focus in on an example. So this was about a 9th grade English language arts class studying the house on Mango Street in a Socratic Seminar style. And they first, as you know, Socratic seminars begin with questions, right? So they were first all brainstorming questions here. And then they moved down and decided, okay, which question do we want to begin with first? Typically in Socratic seminars, we start with questions that might be most relevant to students' lives. So here we have, did Esperanza's experiences change the way you look at yourself? And you'll notice these are different colors to represent the different students, and they'd be answering and responding here. And then, like others were saying, commenting and responding to each other's comments, right? So this just grows and branches out. And when we feel like we've exhausted this question, everyone's been able to share their ideas, we move on to the next and on to the next. And we have that record there. So there's a brief example. And then we have a template where you can go ahead and just start using that. I'm going back to the toolkit and going to click on the gallery walk. I know this is something I love doing in my classroom, but this example actually is from middle school social studies. So again, we pop up with the instructions here for any educator about gallery walks in general. And you'll see that this teacher created 4 exhibits. So they're seeing this famous, iconic photograph, right? A quote, a song from the time period, and another picture. And the students just started responding here to that, whatever it was evoking for them or the instructions. What were their thoughts? What were their responses? What was this saying to them? And they could start connecting. What were they feeling about this? So they'd move from exhibit 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. Jumping into the mind map now. And this is a template from within Lucid Spark that you can just easily add. I'll show you how to do that over here on the left. So just beneath that core toolbar, we have templates. This is kind of a nice go-to so that if we don't want to start from scratch, if we want to get some ideas, they'll pop up here. And like always happens, I think my internet might be slow, but all these templates will pop up here. I'll scroll down to, so you have concept map, different journeys, flow chart, mind map. When I click on it, it tells me more about it. I click insert, and you see how it moves with me? So I can go to any place on the board and add it there. So just to zoom into an example, this is actually an elementary class, and they were studying plants. So I'm just using my trackpad to zoom in again so I can get closer. Studying plants, and you'll see different students were taking different branches of this and working. One took types, one took uses, one took green, shapes, parts, like that. And then you have the template to begin your own over here. And for one last discussion format, if you like this template, we have philosophical chairs, which begins with a bold statement. This was actually a math class, and their statement was, using a car sharing service makes more financial sense than owning a car. And we have agree on one side and disagree. And sometimes when we're doing this in person, we're all moving to different locations. But even in a brick and mortar, we can't be doing that right now, right? We've got a social distance. So here's the continuum. We're bringing it here, and we can all put our responses here and articulate them. And students can be facilitating which ones we're looking at and if we're discussing more about those. So we'll get this toolkit out to you so that you have those templates ready to go if you'd like to use those. And now we're going to move on and over to student feedback, eliciting that feedback, because what we've been hearing as we talk with educators across the country in primary and secondary schools, in higher education as well, is how do I know, how do I see what my students are working on? How do I get authentic feedback, right? That's a key part of our role, because we rely, like we do formative assessments in our sleep, right? We rely on that pulse of information so that we can start to intervene, so we can provide guidance, so we can coach. And they're not waiting until, like a lot of the struggles or challenges I've heard is, I won't get an assignment until the end of the week, until it's due. And then I have no opportunity to go on that learning journey with a student and help them before maybe some concepts are cemented incorrectly. So I want to share 4 features with you that you can use to help elicit that feedback. And to do that, I'll show you an example of how different teachers have actually used them. I'm going to use my mini map again down at the bottom of my screen. and jump to the first example here. This is, we'll move up in grades, but this is an elementary example. And we have a teacher who in 3rd grade wanted her students to study, well, they were studying polygons, but her approach was, how can we have a deeper, more critical thinking approach to polygons? And so she put some examples of polygons and non-polygons, and students dragged out a sticky note to write what they thought the definition was after observing the difference between the two. Here's what she did though. She was like, my students communicate in emojis. Let's have them start responding to each other with emojis. So after they put their definition there, let's say, for example, I typed an angular shape. Then I start reading my peers' answers and saying, do I agree with that? Does it have a straight line? If I'm like, yeah, it does. I come up here to that emoji icon. So when I click on my sticky note, find the pretty much universally accepted emoji icon, right? And choose which one I want to add. I'm going to add clapping hands there. One thing to note, here's another way we can really be evaluating the participation as well. When I scroll over this, you'll notice it tells me who's reacted with that. Dave Palmer and I have both reacted with that. So that still promotes positive digital citizenship. It's not anonymous. We do know who's reacting there. One thing that this teacher did in particular is if she started to see like, whoa, lots of people are saying, yes, it has a straight line. That's like within a glance, that's a quick indicator to her. Hey, we need to clarify. And so she takes the freehand tool and she draws students' attention to the fact, hey, this shape, it has a straight line, but it is not a polygon. Let's talk about why. What else would we need to add to this definition? So that's the first tool, emojis. Now let's jump to another one to navigate myself. I'm going back to my mini map, clicking on my next one, and it really zoomed me in. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And what you'll see is I have the US Constitution here. So this is actually middle school social studies. Middle school? Maybe high school. And what this teacher was doing was saying, hey, it's so valuable that we dissect primary documents, right? We need to go through and dissect. So they were using sticky notes to comment about the different articles, the freeform drawing to call attention, to annotate, but she wanted to move up Bloom's taxonomy and get them thinking critically. So her question was, which article is most important to the success of our nation? Which article is most important to the success of our nation? So after they'd annotated, she said, let's vote on it. I want to get your pulse. I want to get your feedback. So if you notice, we're coming up in the top right-hand corner to Team Tools, and I'm clicking on voting. And I'm going to create a voting session, and Dave is going to vote with me. Which article is most important? And let's say I want to give each student 2 votes. So here's where I can increase or decrease the number of votes. I could set a timer for this if I want. I could add instructions for this, and I'm going to click Start Voting. And what you'll notice, I'm going to scroll over to some of the shorter, I'm just on my trackpad quickly scrolling over, and I'm going to get to the shortest ones. Do you see here that when I hover over it, it gives me an option to vote there? Maybe I think this article is really important, so I'm just going to cast both of my votes. I, as the facilitator, can see the progress of everyone voting. And now that everyone's done, I'm going to click End Voting, and instantly it gives me the results. This is so powerful, right? Because we don't have to use a separate tool to do this, all within the same space where we're brainstorming, we're working, we're thinking. It does it. I can do this on the fly. I don't have to prepare this beforehand, and it automatically calculates it and tabs it for me. It's pretty much effortless at this point. So that's the second one. The third feature that we're going to look at here is comments. So I'll show you, this is high school science. And in this class, they were creating Rube Goldberg machines. But before they actually went to build, they were mapping out what their process, what the flow of that would look like. They used shapes, they mapped it out, and they were submitting it to the teacher to receive approval. So I click on this, and I come up to the comments. And here's where I can directly mention, so this functions like all things we're familiar with, right? Like in Google Docs, things like that. And I'm going to mention Dave Palmer. He's going to be my teacher, my instructor right now, and I'm going to say, is this approved? One beautiful thing for him is that when he clicks, if you see my comments are still open, I have a little indicator. It says locate comment on Canvas. It jumps me directly there. So he's not jumping in and wondering, okay, where do you want my feedback? It takes them directly there. And students can be going back and forth with each other, pinpointing specific places where they're giving feedback, and he can respond to me. You probably noticed a little notification appeared for me in that comment icon. Since I have my comments open, it's showing here. He's approved it. Awesome. I can now start building my Rube Goldberg machine. Okay, those are the 3 features for how we can start to really harness this and get group and class collaboration going here. So we'd love to share with you just 2 more examples of not so much those explicit ways, but a few extensions of how we could get other reflection going on. I'm going back to this and going to share with you an elementary math example. So this teacher just had her students freehand drawing out fractions. And the reason she liked this was it was real-time feedback for her. She could see what they were understanding, and she could actually start commenting, leaving them comments and saying, hey, what about this? One other class was working, they were collaborating in a group to create a podcast. And at the end of it, they wanted to reflect. Reflection's so key, right? So each student dragged out a separate Post-it note and wrote one in each of these categories. And they could see what the class as a whole was reflecting on. One last one that I'll show here. A class created a KWL. We all know KWLs, right? And because this record was stored and saved here, at the end of the unit, they could come back and all say what they learned about the Earth. So some other ways to start to get kind of authentic results from students beyond just the multiple choice options here. Okay, we would love to ask one other question. And here it is. What type of formative assessments or comprehension checks do you use? So if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us in the chat, your name will go into the drawing again as well. But what other types of comprehension checks, formative assessments do you use? Oh, I love this. Fist to 5. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Post a question. Oh, yeah. Post a question and drag to the correct answer box. That's great. Post on an online forum. I love this. Traffic light, giving a color for their understanding. That would be cool. Even moving their name under the different colors. See, hear, feel. Used to think, now I think. Yes. These are great. I'm excited to see how you could create these here too. So as we wrap up, what I'd love to share with you is go back to the question earlier. If you don't have Lucid Spark, how can you get it? And then I'll also share with you some resources if you have questions about Lucid Spark, where you could go for more information. We'll ask for a 4-question survey to get some feedback if you don't mind, and then get you the gift cards. So to get Lucid Spark, what I'm going to do is just type in lucidforeducation.com. If you've seen my URL, lucidforeducationaltogether.com. And when I hit enter, we can come to K-12 to do this. You'll notice under products, we have Lucid Spark. We can go to higher ed. You'll notice we have Lucid Spark. Both take us to the same page for Lucid Spark. And you'll see here, sign up free. Just make sure you enter your educational email for that, and you'll be able to jump right into Lucid Spark. I'm going to go back and show you just one other thing though. Under K-12, on the far right side with resources, we have an Educator Hub. And that's going to give you so many different tools. We have a certification course if you'd like that. We have mini lessons, super cool. You get to see, you hear the story from the teacher, see the student example, get their template, YouTube, very short YouTube tutorials. But I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Here's where we have other webinars. We have more coming up about Lucid Spark. And then we have help centers as well, which take you directly into articles that show you how to do more here. So thank you for your time. What I'm going to go ahead and do right now is post the feedback survey. I'll go ahead and post that in our chat, and this will go out to everyone. It should be just 4 questions. If you don't mind filling that out first, that really helps us know if we're providing effective resources. We'll be getting the discussion strategies toolkit over to you. And I think now we'll have Dave take it away and let us know which of the educators won today, who will be getting a gift card as soon as we wrap up here. Oh, and Dave, I think you might be on mute still.
I was. Thank you. Okay, thank you. A couple of, before I answer these, there were some questions that came, there was a lot of great questions in the Q&A, and there was some requests to have that sent out. So we will do that. We'll get a list of those. There was a few in the chat, some in the Q&A. We'll try to compile those together and send those out so that you've got those questions. Those were great. And then, yeah, so I was throwing these names into a little generator program. So I have 5. And the 5 winners are Patricia Moore, Denise Hosney, Taylor Clark, Jennifer Edelson, and Keith Weber. So forgive me if I've said any of those names incorrectly, but we'll make sure that you get your gift cards.
Thank you, everyone. I saw briefly a question about how do you access Lucid Spark. And if you have Lucid Chart and you're in Lucid Chart, when you click on plus new, you should just see Lucid Spark board right there as well. Oh, you know what? Let's see if my screen sharing is on. Okay, there we go. Should just see Lucid Spark board right there. So from my main Lucid Hub, plus new Lucid Spark board. But thank you everyone for your time. This has been wonderful. I loved the ideas, the questions. That's a great idea to share them out. So we'll make sure we do that and get the gift cards.
Yeah, fantastic engagement. Thank you.
Have a wonderful day, everyone.